Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store. McKenna Fasteners and Tools has been the place to shop for your industrial needs for over 20 years. Carrying the tools you need to get the job done from the brands you can trust, McKenna Fasteners and Tools has you covered. Brands like Milwaukee Tool, established in 1924 and on display in our Milwaukee Red Zone, the largest red zone in Winnipeg. With construction workers and tradespeople in mind, McKenna Fasteners and Tools is your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. So come on down to our Winnipeg store location today, located on 1557 King Edward Street in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Good afternoon, Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League fans, into episode 18 in season 2 of the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast. I'm your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. This is your home of mmjhl hockey, G Show Productions on mmjhl.ca. We're brought to you powered by McKenna Fasteners and Tools, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Terrico, and Goaltender. Speaking of Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, very excited to be announcing something soon that I mentioned earlier on back in 2024 that I haven't really mentioned since, but you'll know what the announcement is once it comes. It's going to be a big one, and we'll even announce it here on the MMJHL podcast, as well as all of our other podcasts that we run here, our other content, all around all of our content. We're going to announce it in many different ways. But as for the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League, last night G Show Productions was on deck to live stream the Charleswood Hawks victory over the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. We got another edition of MMJHL Game Day tonight, as well as on Friday in this great hockey league. In terms of who's going to be joining the show today, it's going to be Kalen Reynolds and Anthony Jacob, two former River East Royal Knights who are now on one of the championship contenders in the league, in the Charleswood Hawks. I had a great chance to ask them about, their thoughts on the trade, their first reactions, how they've been settling in to Charleswood, and what it's going to be like again to play playoff hockey, especially for Kalen Reynolds, as we'll come to find out, as Anthony points out in the interview. It's been quite a while since he's played meaningful playoff hockey. We're going to get into all of that and more with two studs on the Charleswood Hawks now that they've acquired, and probably one of the biggest trades of the MMJHL's 2024-2025 trade deadline. Coming up next on the MMJHL podcast on G Show Productions on mmjhl.ca. It's two players who got dealt to the Charleswood Hawks at the trade deadline, and Anthony Jacob and Kalen Reynolds joining this edition of the MMJHL podcast. Boys, it was a big day of news when I found out that the trade was made, announced on January 6th. Take me through what was going through your boys' mind, knowing that you were going to be shipped off to a contender here in Charleswood.
Well, I think it really came out of nowhere. I think we were so committed to trying to get the Knights into a playoff spot, and eventually, just before the deadline, it kind of seemed like that was a little bit far fetched, and the offer came to us, and so I think for both of us, we just were so excited to get a chance to play some playoff hockey. I know Kalen hasn't played playoff hockey in a long time, and I haven't since my second year with the Knights, so just getting that opportunity was hard to pass up on as hard as it was to leave the team.
Yeah, and for yourself, Kalen, you came into this league in your first year last year, of course, this being your second season in the league. Now, what was your reaction, your thoughts when you heard the news?
Yeah, it was out of nowhere for sure, but it just seemed like the right decision to make. Like Anthony said, we didn't want to leave the boys on the Knights, but good opportunities come, and you got to take them when they're given to you. So it was very exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, from my time watching you guys play on the Hawks, or on the Knights, as I should say, as well as the Hawks, have been very impactful so far. But going back to your time with the Knights for you, Anthony, you've been with that team since 2021, 2022, getting a chance to play some playoff hockey in your first 2 years with the team. And then, of course, going through the struggles these past few seasons with that club. Take me through, I guess, what that was like, your experience, your journey with the Knights.
Yeah, it was an awesome 4 years. Started off with a pretty small role on the team and not necessarily playing every game, and then in my last year, having the chance to be captain and helping lead the team was pretty awesome. And so I love my time with the Knights, and I'll only look back with good memories of the team.
Yeah, and of course, you get to bring some leadership and the experiences you've had over to this Charleswood Hawks team now being in your last year. How would you say that this year specifically, wearing the C, you felt like you grew as a player, I guess, coming into to Charleswood before the trade?
Yeah, I think every single year playing this league, you get a lot more experience, and obviously having a size advantage over some players too who are still growing or some are still in high school or whatnot. So I think just having that size advantage has helped a lot and getting more ice time. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
For you, Kalen, you came into the league, as mentioned last year, into a Knights team that finished, of course, dead last in the MM. But you were one of the few bright spots on that team throughout 32 points in 45 games played. You've been over a point per game so far with Charleswood so far this year. What does that, I guess, say about you as a player, knowing that you've been able to come in and make an immediate impact in two situations right away?
Well, it definitely feels good. The first game, I got a couple goals, so I was kind of scared that I was gonna have to continue that goal tenure. So, I mean, it's been working, so that's it's pretty good for that. But yeah, it's been a good adjustment coming from the Knights and coming to the Knights. The league's actually a lot better than I expected, and yeah, all the guys push each other. So yeah.
Yeah. No, no, for sure. And I mean, your game as well as Anthony's suits, I think, the playing style of this league very well. We saw it on display yesterday with his team laying hit after hit on the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. How exciting has that been, I guess, for you two, being able to play on a team that plays with as much energy, with as much pace, and with as much work ethic as this Charleswood Hawks team does, aligning with your boys' game, which is very driven by, forechecking and that work ethic.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I think one of the biggest things about the Hawks team is we seem to have a lot of scoring depth. It seems like all four lines chip in offensively, and I think we've brought a little more size to the team. But there's a lot of guys on that team already who like to throw hits. So I really like our forward depth, both offensively and physically. So it's been a really good fit, and I really like our depth all around.
For you, Kalen, being able to play with skill to go along with your game, which is very driven on that forecheck, as mentioned. You play with quite a bit of physicality. Of course, being an 0-4 too, this not being your last year, I guess, how excited are you about the future prospects of not only being able to get a chance to play playoff hockey this year, but getting to grow another year in this league and your upcoming final year next year with Charleswood?
Yeah, it's like Anthony said, I haven't been in playoffs in probably like 5 years, so it's very exciting to get back into that mindset and get that energy with the big hits and hopefully an electric crowd and an Iroquois arena there. So it's going to be a big change from this regular season hockey, but it's the way it goes, and we're going to have to play hard for that.
Yeah, playoffs is always an electric time, and we're hoping that the Wi-Fi cooperates with us over there. Of course, we're able to stream some games over there as we were able to last year. But Anthony, going into, I guess, your final year this year, being an 0-3, and knowing that, I mean, going back to you being a captain and bringing in that leadership and experience, do you feel like that's maybe one of the most valuable things that you maybe bring to this Charleswood Hawks team, knowing that you've also had a chance to go through playoff experience and knowing the heartbreaks of not making it and knowing what it's like to maybe not take that for granted?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that the Hawks have a great leadership core already, and so I know both me and Kaylin don't want to push our way into that. We're going to bring whatever leadership we can and sprinkle that in, and especially come playoff time. But for now, we're trying to lead by example and just show what we can do on the ice. And when that comes to leading off the ice too, we want to help. But they have such a good leadership core. Van Norman's a great captain, and got lots of good leaders on that team. So we're just trying to fit in wherever we can.
And you boys certainly looking like you've been fitting in so far. We had a chance to, of course, broadcast your matchup last night against the Raiders Junior Hockey Club in a third period where they were threatening to come back and tying the game, but this Charleswood team getting out of it with a 4-3 victory. I guess take me through that matchup. Very intense, very high pace against a Raiders team that's been playing as one of the best so far here in 2025.
Yeah, it's a young Raiders team. They kind of they play hard and they play fast, but they're not necessarily the most structured. But they're not the easiest to play against because they're good at getting behind their defensemen and going hard on the forecheck. But we played a great game, and Kalen scored another huge third period goal. He's been automatic off the rush so far since joining the Hawks. So him getting a huge goal, a couple big goals from Monin, and we kept it in, although it got a little bit closer at the end than maybe we wanted.
Yeah, and that game, the theme of it was a lot of physicality. This team really setting the tone, especially in, I believe, that second period where Chance Traverse and that Dudich and Pennerline were laying the body. For you, Kalen, you were also getting into the physicality, of course, scoring a goal as well. Take me through, I guess, the enjoyment you take in playing in games like that, knowing that this Raiders team was going to give this Hawks team everything you could handle.
Yeah, it's definitely a good game when we get to battle it out and go as hard as we can for each other, the boys, and help Keegan Gordon secure that win too is huge, and puts us in a second place playoffs or second place standings, which was a huge win for us yesterday.
For sure.
So yeah.
No, yeah. And I mean, you mentioned Keegan Gordon, and he ends up winning his 20th game of the season so far this year, leading the league in that regard. For this Charleswood Hawks team, you're going to be not in action tonight, of course, on Thursday night's doubleheader, but back in action at home on Friday night against the Pembina Valley Twisters, then finishing off the weekend against the St. Patel Junior Victorias. Two teams where this team can come away with wins, but it's, not guaranteed. Of course, what I guess is the mindset heading into another weekend of hockey with, your new squad in Charleswood.
Well, I've heard that Charleswood and St. Vital have a pretty good rivalry this year, and there's been some pretty physical games. So I think first of all, I'm really excited to be joining that and being on the Charleswood side of that rivalry. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. That's Sunday, and then of course Friday's Pembina Valley. We had some pretty close games against Pembina Valley with the Knights this year. Our last game, I think it was our last game as Knights. We won in overtime against Pembina Valley. So that was a really exciting game. We're hoping that maybe it's not as close with Charleswood this time, but again, kind of like the Raiders, it's a young team that's hard on the forecheck, so we got to be careful and can't take it for granted. But it's an exciting weekend coming up, and especially with this Wednesday game, 3 games in a week is pretty crazy.
Well, for sure. Kind of unusual, but that's the way the schedule's kind of been set with some of the weather delays in there, not cooperating, of course, with the Manitoba highways. For you, Kalen, excited for yourself to be joining this rivalry against St. Vital, like Anthony alluded to, being on this side of the rivalry now?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game to play for sure. Always loved the rivalry games as the Knights were rivals with the Railers. So want to have that hard hitting, high scoring hockey game that we preach, and yeah, it'll be fun when that game comes up.
Yeah, and for that rivalry, had a chance to experience watching that unfold in the postseason last year, going to 7 games. Would be a heck of a playoff series again if these two teams were able to meet up. But I got to ask you boys one last question. I mean, since being dealt from the Knights to the Hawks, had a chance to play the Knights back on January 12th in, I believe it was Terry Sawchuk. Yeah,
Yeah.
and being able to go back there for you, Anthony, I'm sure that was kind of an emotional night knowing that you spent so many years there, 4 years with the Knights. For you, Kalen, of course, only spending the one. But yeah, I guess to finish off, take me through what that night what was truly like going through that experience.
Yeah, it was pretty unexpected, and it came up so quick. It was the first weekend after being dealt. I was already back at Terry Sawchuk, and it felt weird. I don't think it felt quite as weird as I was expecting it to. But just being on the other side, even just warming up on the far side, taking the far bench, things I've never done before and things I've been used to for 4 years. But it was fun playing against the old boys and trying to knock them down with some hits was pretty fun. And it was just a fun experience. And I was happy that I got to get it over with early in the schedule. And don't play them again at Terry Sawchuk, but I think one more time at Eric Coy. So that'll definitely be another game that I mark in the calendar.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic in a way. It's on Valentine's Day, which is kind of funny. It's like meeting up with that old ex, right? But for you, Kalen, I'll kick off with this. Any chirps thrown your way in the reunited affair you guys had with the Royal Knights back on January 12th?
Yeah, there were definitely some chirps being thrown out, telling me I suck and all that. So that kind of hurt the heart, but I know it's all good, good riddance and all that.
It's all in fun and games, right? All in
Yeah,
fun games for sure. And yeah, I mean, you boys, hoping you continue to have a blast on this Charleswood Hawks team. Best of luck coming up this weekend and the rest of the way this season. Can't wait to call some more Hawks games here on the network. Until then, though, you guys take care, and thanks for taking the time and joining me here.
Thank you very much.
And 04 born forward Kalen Reynolds, 03 born forward and now former River East Royal Knights captain, and Anthony Jacob joining this edition of the mmjhl podcast. As mentioned, Kalen with a goal in last night's win for the Charleswood Hawks. We'll be showing you highlights of that matchup coming up next year. We're going to hit a commercial first off, though. Before we send it to a commercial, however, I'm going to show you what's to come here to end off January's schedule in the league, which last day of January, crazy, already coming up tomorrow on Friday, as there will be a triple header in the league. Another Thursday night doubleheader in the mmjhl tonight, as we'll have Victoria's and Canucks on mmjhl game day tonight again, as we'll be pretty busy. 4 games in the next 5 days here, as we'll have Saturday off, but yeah, here's how the last week of action has looked. Some blowout wins in there. The Railer Express and St. Bonaventure's most notably taking care of the bottom two teams in the league, as we can see there with blowout wins. 12 from Transcona, 11 from St. Boniface put up on the scoreboard. We also saw some close games in there. An overtime victory for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, and going to get into them a bit more in the next few weeks, touching on them a bit more coming up in this episode. But this is a team that's been one of the best in the mmjhl since 2025 has started, and they're in 7th place right now. With 32 points as our standings, brought to you by Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. For the Fort Garry Twins, the first place team right now by a slim margin is that top four man. Oh, is it ever tight, as we're going to talk about the favorites in the league coming up more in this episode, and much more content to come here on episode 18, season 2 of the mmjhl podcast, on your home for mmjhl hockey on G Show Productions. Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, The Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store. Welcome back to this edition of the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast, episode 18, season 2, brought to you by Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. If you are watching on this Thursday afternoon, thank you for tuning in. If you're watching this at any point, thank you for tuning in as well. Excited for what's to come this weekend on the network. We haven't announced our February schedule yet, but we're going to be announcing what game we're going to be doing today to give you a little sneak peek, because it's going to be a bit more of a slower month coming up in February from mmjhl game day from that perspective, as we'll be covering a lot of the MFHL playoffs as we're coming up on our busiest time of the year here, folks, as we'll be hitting playoffs here in the mmjhl before we know it. But last night in the league, it was the Charleswood Hawks who took on the Raiders Junior Hockey Club in a game that was rescheduled due to the snowstorm that canceled this game a few Fridays ago. This was played on a neutral site at the Hockey for All Center, and G Show Productions was there to cover this victory for the Charleswood Hawks to improve to 25 wins on the season and to tighten up the standings up top between, the top teams and the Hawks, the Railer Express, the Fort Garry Twins, the Riels are close in there. And the thing that was impressive to me, to be honest with you, was the way that the Raiders Junior Hockey Club stayed with the Hawks in this game and really pushed in the third period. Unfortunately, we were unable to get all the goals as we ran into a Wi-Fi problem that always seems to happen more frequently lately. I hope that it cooperates itself coming up here into playoffs, of course, and for the rest of the season. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the highlights. As we were able to catch the first period goal to open up the scoring halfway in. Mason Larbell gets a fortunate bounce off the back of Keegan Gordon, as Gordon makes the save initially, but puck goes high up in the air and ricochets off his back. But Charleswood would end up taking a 2-goal advantage in that second period, scoring twice to go up by 1, and it would be Sam Monin who would put away the loose puck for his first goal on the night. 3 points to that point. But up until this point, the Hawks up 3. The Raiders Junior Hockey Club wouldn't back down, however, as it would be Cole Kennedy putting home his 5th goal of the season, getting open in the slot moments later. A bad bounce for Charleswood, fortunate for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, as they're able to regain possession of the puck passing it over to an open Owen Lourenco, shorthanded to cut the lead down to only one for the Charleswood Hawks, but it wouldn't be enough for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club as they fall in that game by a score of 4-3. And just in taking a look at it, like, the Raiders Junior Hockey Club ends up out shooting the Charleswood Hawks in that matchup. Even though they fall short, I think that there's a lot to like in this team's game right now. They didn't even have who I'd say is the front runner for Player of the Month in Nathan Lenoski in the lineup, as he's got 18 points in only 6 games played in January, which is phenomenal. But this is a team, was talking to my uncle actually, my uncle Mark, that happens to be on the Hawks coaching staff. But it's something that I've noticed too. Like, look, this team is young. They don't have, I guess, any real notable big name superstars yet, but that could change. I mean, Nathan Lenoski has been really making a name for himself, especially in this month of January, even though he wasn't playing in the lineup last night. But then you take a look at other guys on this Raiders Junior Hockey Club team as well. They're able to get scoring from the back end. And it's a team that's built with a lot of really good young talent overall that plays really good as a team. Anthony Jacob pointed out that this team doesn't really play with the system, but they play with a lot of energy, and we've seen that over the past month that's really come through. But even if they don't play as the most structurally sound team, this is a team that still plays good together as a unit, that's going to come at you in swarms on the forecheck, and that's worked out to their advantage. They'll use their speed to get behind you, and this is a team that is underrated in terms of their depth, to be honest with you, because even though they don't have Nathan Lenoski, I'd say, has become a superstar in this league. 25 points in only 14 games played, which is phenomenal. But Lucas D'Souza, 18 goals, leads this team. Then you look at their depth in Owen Lourenco, who is also a solid penalty killer, as we saw, can also contribute offensively with a short-handed goal last night. Their captain, Ashton Henry, has been contributing offensively with 12 goals. Then you got Ryan Cromie, who has some skill, one of their highly skilled wingers. So even though this team doesn't have the superstars like the top teams in this league, more so collectively, like they don't have a bunch of superstars, they have a bunch of really good players that are really starting to buy in here to what's been going down with the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. And for this team, like, we've seen it, they've been able to come back in games and win. They've been able to hang with the top end teams in the league. Does this team have enough to go on a run and shock teams in the playoffs? I think that remains to be seen. I think they definitely do have the capabilities in the lineup, but it just comes down to consistency. Do they have more of that compared to the teams that they'll be facing off against in the playoffs? I'd say that the Raiders are well on their way to securing a playoff spot here in the next month for sure. When we take a look at their last week of action, 5-2 victory over the River East Royal Knights, a comeback victory to win an OT over the St. James Junior Canucks, and then starting off their weekend with, come from behind. Almost a come-from-behind victory, just falling short against the Charleswood Hawks. For Charleswood, the mmjhl has them in second place as they got more regulation wins over Transcona. Forgot to change that. But yeah, huge win for them as they tie up Transcona in the standings. For Transcona, a team that was once atop of the mmjhl standings, but things have changed here recently, as the Fort Garry Twins have been 9-0-1 in their last 10 games, playing phenomenally right now. As we can see, they're a very strong goals for and goals against ratio. One of the best in the league. St. Boniface, if we take a look at the standings, ends up having actually tied with the Fort Garry Twins in that goals differential at +70. So these two teams right now have been just, I think, the best in this month of January. You'll see, spoiler alert, they're going to be top two in the power rankings we got coming up here. But a huge part of the Fort Garry Twins' success has been their top end talent, and that's really come through as the season's gone along. Dean Gorchinski and Carter Halamanders lead the league in points for the St. Boniface Riels. Connor Davis continues to impress, now in the top 4 of points leaders in this league with 59. They're going to be losing him for a few weeks, though, as tried to get him booked on for an interview, but told me he's going on vacation. So that's going to be a good test for a Riels team that has a lot of depth already. Them and the Twins have some phenomenal goaltending too, and that's on display here in the top 5. In our stats graphics, by the way, for the MMJHL, brought to you by Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. But Alex Paul's 16-2-2 this season, in .918 save percentage and 5 shutouts. Front runner, I'd say, right now for goaltender of the year, given that Fort Garry is also first place in this league right now. Michael O'Sullivan, not too shabby himself, 13-5 with a shutout in there and a .914 save percentage. As for the goal leaders, this has been a great revelation for the Fort Garry Twins, as not only is Dean Gorchinski shown to be among the top playmakers and the top playmaker to this point in the season, way ahead in the assist category. But like Carter Halamanderis, he can also put up the goals, now up to 23. When you're able to get that from your best forward, putting the puck in the back of the net at a high level and assisting at a high level as Dean Gorchinski has, it gives you a lot of confidence to put him out in any key situation, in any key moment. And Dean is a player that can really take over a play in the game. He's got that X factor ability, game breaking ability, maybe quite not on the level from just the eye tests I've seen of guys like Tyler Rubini and a Rory Neal, but for Dean Gorchinski, he's right up there with those guys in terms of their game breaking ability. Also want to mention a guy like Peyton Bateman in there, but this is a guy that just continues to get better and better. Been a true leader this season on the Fort Garry Twins, and a big piece, probably, maybe, well, I'd say one of the biggest reasons why, top 3 for sure, for why Fort Garry's been so successful this season. We're going to get into the power rankings now, as Fort Garry is on top. The Riels jumping up a spot from our last power ranking. Same with every single team here in the top 5 except for the Railer Express. I just like the consistency that the Raiders have been playing in with their game more in this month of January. As we take a look at the last 10 games for the Fort Garry, or for the Transcon Railer Express, 5-3-2 compared to 6-3-1 record for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. That was 7-2-1 heading into the matchup last night before they faced off against the Charleswood Hawks. But yeah, I just like how everything's been put together right now for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. They've had some big wins throughout this past month, where I think they've come at a higher level, a higher percentage compared to a team like the Railer Express, who I think are starting to find ways to they're hoping to find ways to win in closer games once again, as their last game they blew the doors off of the River East Royal Knights. They end up staying in 9th place, same with the Pembina Valley Twisters. I feel like not much is going to change between these two teams from now until the end of the season in the power rankings, as that's where they'll mainly stay. But yeah, for the Fort Garry Twins, the best team over the past 10 games in the league right now at 9-0-1. Reason why the Riels over the Charleswood Hawks and St. Boniface with a 7-2-1 record in their last 10 compared to the Charleswood Hawks into pretty much identical. And last time out, the St. Boniface Riels end up beating the Charleswood Hawks. So that was pretty recent. That was actually last Friday in a game we unfortunately couldn't make due to some difficulties behind the scenes. But the team that drops the lowest in the power rankings ends up being the St. James Junior Canucks, where they've been pretty solid in their last 10 games. It's just not as good as the teams that are above them. You could argue that maybe they go over the Railer Express, as taking a look at the schedule for the past few games. They ended up beating the Railer Express to start off this month. So, yeah, a bit of an error from us there, but still, St. James was last time ranked second in the power rankings. Not at that position at this point, in my opinion, just simply because the Riels, Hawks, and Raiders have been so good as of late. I think the Raiders just a bit more consistent than the Canucks since 2025 has started. And, yeah, their win to end off 2023 came against St. James, and they came back to beat them last time out. So those are the power rankings brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. Exciting news, the All-Star Game, the date has been announced, February 15th, so Saturday night at Terry Sawchuk. Lineups are going to be announced soon. We'll have them announced on G Show Productions, on this podcast, on the MMJHL podcast, as well as on our website and on our social media pages, of who ends up making it representing from the 10 teams in the league. Is it's going to be the Royal Knights who are hosting this in their venue, which is, I think, a silver lining, and I guess a season that has gone nowhere near to where they hoped it would be going. As for a player who I think is going to be an all-star, we got him on History Watch now, as Rory Neal just surpassed Riley Beauchemin in the past weekend of action in the all-time points leaderboards. He's now only 14 shy of tying Tanner Magalus, Raiders Junior Hockey Club legend and MMJHL legend, of course, but the games played compared to Magalus and Neal is quite astounding, to be honest with you. This kid being a defenseman and doing the things he's been able to do, having a strong background coming in, of course, playing some action in the WHL, but a gift for the St. James Junior Canucks to be able to get a player of this quality, and he's going to be sticking through to the end and could very well find himself on top as the all-time points leader in all-time points in the all-time MMJHL record book. So we're going to keep an eye on that, and we're going to get a chance to see Rory Neal in action tonight against the St. Vital Junior Victorias as he looks to get closer and closer to that all-time points lead, as I should say. But we're going to take a commercial break, and coming up next, I'm going to be taking you into, just a few things I'd like to touch on, some topics surrounding the MMJHL. Going to be talking about some favorites, as well as one of them specifically in the Charles Wood Hawks. Coming up next on Episode 18, Season 2 of the MMJHL podcast on gshow.ca on G Show Productions.
Make Canada Fasteners and Tools has been the place to shop for your industrial needs for over 20 years. Carrying the tools you need to get the job done from the brands you can trust, Make Canada Fasteners and Tools has you covered. Brands like Milwaukee Tool, established in 1924 and on display in our Milwaukee Red Zone, the largest red zone in Winnipeg. With construction workers and tradespeople in mind, Make Canada Fasteners and Tools is your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. So come on down to our Winnipeg store location today, located on 1557 King Edward Street in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Welcome back to this edition of the MMJHL podcast. MMJHL fans and anyone else who may be tuning into this one, if this came across your YouTube algorithm on this Thursday afternoon. If you're enjoying this edition of the show up until this point, be sure to subscribe, because not only will it help support us, but it helps you stay up to date with when more MMJHL content comes out, as well as all the other content we release here on the network. A busy weekend as always for us. Coming up, we'll have Saturday off in a way, but not really, as we'll have a Manitoba hockey podcast running on Saturday morning. Going to be talking to an MJHL coach from the Verdun Oil Capitals, so that should be very exciting, as they're in a tight playoff race themselves. As for in this league, in the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League, how the standings look, 5 teams have clinched so far. three teams looking poised to clinch the remaining three spots who are in the playoffs right now. In the Stonewall Jets, the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, and the St. James Junior Canucks. Going to have a chance to see St. James on the network tonight at the Centennial at St. Patel Centennial Arena. Puck will drop at 7:30 p.m. As, let's talk about Rory Neal, how he's at 326 points. Unbelievable stuff from the 03 defenseman for the St. James Junior Canucks as Rory Neal into his last year here in the league. As for St. James, they've been getting better and better as the season goes along, and the way this season series has played out so far between them and the St. Vital Junior Victorias, it's been, advantage for the Canucks so far. 2-1 against St. Vital. Last win against them actually on MMJHL game day back on December 19th, as we had to go pre-recorded at the end for that one due to some technical difficulties with the internet. But St. James 6-4 victory, looking to put up another one in St. Vital here tonight, as we'll have that for you on the network. Captain Neal and the boys going to be rolling in. But as for the upcoming games, there's going to be one on Saturday. Rare this happens in the league, but they end up doing this every once in a while throughout the season. With Fort Garry, they're going to be heading over to Morris to take on the Pembina Valley Twisters, who are looking to play spoiler right now against one of the hottest teams in the league in the Fort Garry Twins. I'd say the hottest team in the league right now with 5 wins in a row. As for the game we're going to be covering on Sunday, we're going to be covering, just going to pull up the schedule actually, because I had 2 in mind, either Transcona versus the St. James Junior Canucks or the Riels against the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. I think the Raiders, the way they've been playing, they make that matchup really intriguing against a St. Boniface team who lost to start off 2025 against them, albeit that was in the Raiders' home rink at Seven Oaks Arena. St. Boniface would have them in their home rink this time around. So I'm just trying to pull up the schedule here to confirm this for you all. And yes, it will be Railer Express against the Canucks. That's the game that we're going to be covering. So that puck drop will be at 2 p.m. on Sunday afternoon at Golden Arena at East End. I remember why I scheduled that now. I don't want to deal with internet difficulties. The internet is stronger at East End Arena, so that's a big reason why we decided to cover that game. But excited to be back in St. Boniface soon here, as the MMJHL regular season will be come to a close before we know it. And with that, we're going to be getting into some topics now. Now, for the Charleswood Hawks, this is a team that has been MMJHL royalty throughout the 2000s and pretty much for their whole history, to be honest with you. Like, Charleswood, growing up hearing about this league, has been kind of the standard of, the team that everyone wanted to beat and the team that so many people had trouble beating. When we talk about, the great dynasties in sports, even though this is the MMJHL, like Charleswood, what they did in 2010 specifically, unreal. 01-02, the year I was born in 2001. End of that season, they end up winning a championship. They go back-to-back. St. Vital wins their only championship in 03-04. Then Charleswood three-peats. Pembina Valley ends up winning a championship. And then Charleswood goes back-to-back, 4 championships in a row. And since then, haven't been able to hoist another Jack McKenzie trophy. But as for the Charleswood Hawks, a team that's so well built now at this point, a team that is a championship contender, being second place in the league, a team that made one of the biggest trades in the trade deadline, bringing on the guests who I had on the show here today, in Kalen Reynolds and Anthony Jacob. And even before those trades, adding in different pieces like Cole Penner into this lineup, getting great value back for trading away a player in Rylan Huging. as well as bringing in a player who's been so impactful on the D-core in a player in Eric Krakowitz as well. So they've just been adding pieces and pieces to already a great core that has prided themselves on the buy-in they've had so far this year, which we've seen that with their strong starts in games, especially as the season's gone along. This is a team that plays with a lot of speed and a lot of pace, and we saw that on display last night. A team that has players that can lay the body, a team with the Reynolds and Jacob move, get even bigger and add more size, and they already had a big bruiser there who revealed himself to be even more of that last night in Trans Tavares, who, wow, had one sequence where he laid 3 big booming hits on Raiders Junior Hockey Club players. So they got so many different skill sets and aspects on this team that you can fall in love with, to be honest with you. Like, this is one of the deepest teams in the league, a team that has the wins leader in goal, and a team that's been one of the most consistent teams in the league throughout this season so far, throughout their first 34 games, that finds themselves, of course, 1 point back of first place, right behind the Fort Garry Twins at this point. But if there was a few knocks that you can have on this team, as well built as they are, and for sure going to be a championship contender, as already mentioned, it's that they've had some third period woes as of late. And it's kind of crazy because in some highlights we'll be showing you coming up here, showcase our game recaps on G Show Productions, which we'll be posting a bunch in the next few days here. But their third period, their effort won it, honestly, in their OT victory against the Transcone Railer Express, coming back to win 4-3, down 3-2 in the third period. But since then, this team has been not so great in the third period, as they got hemmed in last night against the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, outshot as the game went along, 40-29, in their victory on last Sunday against the Stonewall Jets. This team ends up outshooting the Jets by quite a bit, but in the third period, once this team, of course, they were already in a tight hockey game, and they pull away in the third period, but got outshot by quite a bit. So the scoring comes through there. And then, you look at this most recent game where the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, ties them in that second period in terms of the score, and ends up outshooting them 14-9 in that period, their biggest shot advantage of the night. The game after their victory against the Transcone Railer Express for this Charleswood Hawks team, they end up giving up 3 goals in that third period, where they only score 2. So third period woes, reason I bring it up is really that's one of the only knocks in this team's game right now, and it's not even that much of a negative through the grand scheme of things, because this team has still been able to, of course, come away with victories in their past few games. But if it's a team that's going to continue to get hemmed in as the season goes along here in the third period, against teams with really good forechecks, it's maybe a team that needs to find another gear in the third period when it comes to a Final Four series this season, as they could potentially be playing in. So I think that it's a great time for this Charleswood Hawks team now to continue to focus on building on the good habits, cut out the bad habits with them already in a playoff spot, and still playing meaningful hockey, trying to get the best positioning as possible. As the standings will show you it once again here, but they are absolutely tight near the top, as not many points separates the top 4 teams in the standings. Even St. Boniface is right behind there in terms of them and the Charleswood Hawks, only back by 2 points. Same with the Transcone Railer Express. The Reals only 2 points behind them, and 3 points behind the Fort Garry Twins. St. Vital, the 5th playoff team in right now, they're going to be looking to try to catch those top 4 teams, but it's going to be tough given how consistent these teams have truly been overall. But in terms of Transcona, I guess out of the top 4 teams right now, they've been the most inconsistent. But I think that, most inconsistent as of late, but I do still believe that they have all the pieces to go on a championship run this year. I think there's so many teams that have the capability to go on a run. Could we see a Cinderella run even? That's a topic I'll be talking about next week, as the Raiders Junior Hockey Club have really starting to make things interesting here as the season's gone along. Same with the St. James Junior Canucks, and can you even call them a Cinderella story if they were able to go on a championship run, given that they've won championships back years for the past 3 years. Like, this team going for the first four-peat since Charles Wood pulled it off in 2011 and 12. I'm not even sure if you can really call that a Cinderella run, especially as this team is over 500 now. But in terms of the favorites, the top four, like, who should be considered the favorite out of these four teams when we take a look at, the Fort Garry Twins, who 9-0-1 in their last 10 games, for the Transcon Railer Express, who, even though they haven't been playing their best hockey in 2025, still find themselves a point away, or a win away from taking back the first place in the standings. As for the Charleswood Hawks, right, they're a team that's right there, same with the St. Boniface Riels, and what all these teams have in common is they got really well-balanced built teams. I think for Transcona, just starting off with them, like, this was a team that I think the biggest questions from what I heard is people really like their skill, but they were thinking, well, what would the goaltending situation be like? How would their goaltending step up? It's come from two rookies, and Sage Delarone and Logan Maroney, who have really brought them stability in the crease. And this is a team that, has arguably the most high-powered top six in the league. The reason I say arguably is that, the Twins, the Hawks, as well as the Riels have a really potent top six as well. But for the Transcona Railer Express, like, this is a really well-built team overall. You take a look at the Charleswood Hawks, a team that's added in different pieces as the year's gone along and was already a favorite heading into the season, given that they've made it to back-to-back Final Fours. A team that's only added pieces to this lineup that's benefited them, while recently going all in with the Reynolds and Jacob acquisition. And like Anthony Jacob pointed out, like, this team already had such a strong leadership group set in. I think that adding him is only a benefit to strengthen, the experience in that room. And it's a team that has a phenomenal and a rich history of success in this league on their coaching staff, starting with their head coach and Dylan Smith, who was a part of Charles Wood's most recent championships near the end of the 2010 decade and at the 2000s decade and the start of the 2010s decade. So Charles Wood, one of the most well-balanced teams in the league, as already talked about. Then you look at the St. Boniface Riels, who, if you just look at them with the eye test, you could make the argument that this is the most skilled team out of the four and the most skilled team in the league, who's only added to their goaltending by bringing in a player in Owen LaRocque at the trade deadline, who was a part of the best goaltending tandem in the league last season in Pembina Valley. Then you look at the Fort Garry Twins, who I've been vocal about this. They got their best team in years this season, and a team that added in their biggest trade of the season, Ryland Hugin, which was a win-now type of move, given that he's an 0-3 and was tied for the top in goals last season. This team has, you could argue, well, outside of defense maybe, but the best player at each position in the league. So what do these teams also have in common? Well, a bunch of goal scorers, over 10 goals, so that speaks to the depth when you take a look at their goals for, goals against averages. Like, these teams are top four in the league as well. In terms of the weaknesses with these teams, like, there's cracks in, I think, every team's games. I think for the Railers, as of recent, it's been, sheltering a bit more instead of going for the gusto, and I think that it was no holds bar against the River East Royal Knights, and that's why that game ended up being such rout and getting so ugly, with them winning it 12-1. But when this team is playing aggressive all out, like we've seen them be the best team in the league. And I think it really comes down to, and it's been said so many times, which team comes ready to play on the given night is probably going to have the most success when we're talking among not only the top 4 teams in the right now, but any team in this league. And I think that's going to be probably the biggest story and the biggest part of who ends up winning the championship at the end of things here, because even though Charleswood has probably the weakest special teams out of any of these teams here, they've still been able to come through big time on special teams. Will that hold them back? Who knows? Will Transcona's maybe lack of experience with them still being a relatively young group hold them back? Will the St. Boniface Riels, well, does their special teams run dry in the end, and does their offense start to get snake bitten? Does that ended up being the big issues for them in their Final Four loss to the Pembina Valley Twisters last year in that sweep? And for the Fort Garry Twins, does their talent carry through into the playoffs, and can this team find ways to vanquish their playoff ghosts of the past? And can Scott Wong and this coaching staff take the necessary steps to get this team over the hump? If you were to ask me who the favorite is to win the championship right now, like, it's been fluctuating and changing as the season goes along, to be honest with you. The favorite right now, in my opinion, for me personally, would be the St. Boniface Riels, given that this is the best defensive team in the league right now. Also has high-end offensive capabilities like the rest of the top 4 teams, but there's just something about the way that the St. Boniface Riels play that is just so pretty and so fun to watch. They move that puck so beautifully, and it's a team that their cycle, you could argue their forecheck is arguably the best in the league and can hem teams in the most effectively. I think for St. Boniface, out of the teams that I've watched, they've been able to play the most consistent 60 minutes consistently as this season goes along. I mean, you got to give respect to the Fort Garry Twins. I'll give respect to them. Like, you can make the argument for that team being the outright favorite right now. I don't really know if there is an outright favorite, but for me, my personal favorite right now to take home the championship would be the St. Boniface Riels. To be honest with you, earlier in the season, it was the Charleswood Hawks, but there's just something in the St. Boniface Riels game, and given the fact that they've taken a step year in and year out for the past few seasons under the Zach Franco regime, which once he came in, this team, of course, made it back to the playoffs after missing in 2021-2022. Their progression has been evident, and this team, no matter where they finish, I think they're going to be a handful to play against, simply because they're relentless on the forecheck and have that youth paired with that great experience. And their trade deadline moves, bringing in Alex Van Dynes as well as Michael Hebner, I think, and bringing in Owen Larenko, like, this team shored up weaknesses. I think, them and the Charleswood Hawks maybe did the best out of any team in the league. So yeah, for me, St. Boniface, just something about their game. They've been special so far this year, and I just like, from what I've seen by the eye test, the heart and the relentlessness and just the way they've been able to come together and play so far this year. And their big test coming up is going to be if they can, handle the pressure without their captain in these upcoming games, without Connor Davis in the lineup. For the upcoming matchups in this league, of course, tonight, going to be a doubleheader. Fort Garry going to be in Stonewall, looking to improve to a 6-game win streak. We'll be on tap for St. Vital versus St. James. 3 games on Friday, and then we got one singular game on Saturday. Fort Garry going to, of course, get the day off on Sunday. Same with Pembina Valley, as there'll be 4 teams in action. G-Show Productions will be on deck for Transcona taking on the St. James Junior Canucks. We're going to end off this show with some highlights, and then I'll be back for some final words of the Transcona Railer Express's loss in that thriller of a game against the Charleswood Hawks. That's coming up next on this edition of the mmjhl podcast on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca.
Good afternoon, Manitoba and good evening, Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League fans. Welcome into another edition of MMJHL Game Day here on your home for hockey in Manitoba and your home for MMJHL hockey in the province on G-Show Productions, mmjhl.ca. I'm your host, Graham, the G-Show Forsyth. On Friday night where they were supposed to take on the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. That's in the past, though. We're into the present here tonight where it's Railway Express taking on the taking on the Charleswood Hawks here. Early on, a chance scores! And no, the net off to start things off, similar to Thursday night, where the St. Vital Junior Victorious thought they got the first goal of the game in the second period. Net was deemed off. Of course, started 2024 kind of slow, but really picked it up. Showed to be the most consistent team throughout 2024. Is coming down prudent. Has St. Laurent headed to the net, backhand turned aside by Gordon in tight. No icing on the play called, as allows for Charleswood to change and not be affected by a potential Transcona chance coming down the other way. But here's a turnover, far side of the net, denying him. A Railway Express player was Gordon, as the Charleswood Hawks play this down low on a Reynolds stick. To Stevenson, sends it across. To Krekowitz, through scores! And it's one of the newer additions for the Charleswood Hawks. In number 4, Eric Krekowitz puts a shot through safely. Direction of a teammate at first. His own end. Van Bush, one open man in front, Chudley scores! Well, it's a bad breakdown inside of the Charleswood Hawks zone for them. They're thinking they're already out of this end. They forget the man that's in front. One of the most dangerous players in the league with the puck on his stick, and Evan Chudley couldn't settle it down, just backhands this into the corner. As this stripped away now, Michael Todorek, he gets it stripped away just as fast upon entry. Now taken away by the Charleswood Hawks. 2-on-1 developing. Carlson tried to get it back over to Sperber, but huge defensive play. Looks to break this puck up now. But Sullen takes a bump afterwards, though, by Glavino. Allows for this puck to be broken out. Big Fussin drops this for Reynolds. Stripped. Stevenson shot blocked there. Huge one from number 20 and Howell. That's, I believe, Turner. One by Morrison on a tie-up. Rebound there! Oh, that just wanted the net off a 13 stick. Thirdly, Traverse going to work, along with another Charleswood Hawks player. Traverse able to get out of it. Gets it up to the point to White. That shot tipped. Scores! But could not. Parker White with the assist on that goal announced that it was Penner who got it. As this turned over by the Hawks. Up top to the point, that shot scores! Well, the Transcona Railway Express saying anything you could do, I could do better. They're able to hold that in at the point. Carlson down low again. Stick handling with it up to the point. Glavino unable to quite hold it in. Loses balance too. Is this a turnover? Into the Railway Express possession. 2-on-1 coming. Over to Todorek. Denied by Gordon. To keep it in. Holding the line. That backdoor feed. A tic-tac-toe play. Almost set up with success. But for Charleswood, they're left empty-handed there. Nice pressure. And a big hit by Shadenough. Was taken away by the Railway Express again. Protecting, using the net well was Johnson. That shot through Larkins. Picked up the rebound with Shadenough. And he puts it home for the Railway Express to go up in this one for the first time this evening. Turns this over, gets it right back, and kicks it outside down the right side to Morrison. Nice chip by Morrison to continue going north-south. Goes towards the net. Loose puck there, banging away at it is Jacob. Now Dudichin on the rebound. Somehow, some way, this puck doesn't get into the back of the net with a wide open cage. Or that from happening. Big Fussin threads it to the middle to Stevenson. That shot turned aside by Dellero, and Big Fussin not quite able to get to the rebound. The Hawks hold this in at the line into the skates, and now the forehand of Krekowitz. A nice move to alleviate pressure. That set up. One-timer chance turned aside. As Glavina maneuvers in now. Passes it over to Stevenson. Cuts to the middle. Stevenson drops back to Reynolds. Now drop back. Now to Stevenson. Rebound there. Searching for it are the Hawks, but can't get it. Down the right side. Chips and goes. Lewis has a man heading towards the net, and Reynolds, but huge defensive play by Jace Larkins. Catching all puck He's spread out to take away time and space from this Hawks team. Krekowitz at the point, tipped on net, rebound there, scores! On their second power play of the night, they come through against one of the best penalty kills in the league. Able to get by, but Elliot Lewis stayed on him all the way. Michael Todorek now stripped away of the puck by Matt Carlson, and he can wheel. Matt Carlson sticking with him all the way was Todorek. Plays it across to Krekowitz, backdoor scores! And what if you had said probably halfway into regulation would have come to a shock, ends up being a reality in the end for the Charleswood Hawks as they come away with a victory in tonight's matchup, stunning the Transcona Railer Express here in their own barn.
McKenna Fasteners and Tools has been the place to shop for your industrial needs for over 20 years. Carrying the tools you need to get the job done from the brands you can trust, McKenna Fasteners and Tools has you covered. Brands like Milwaukee Tool, established in 1924 and on display in our Milwaukee Red Zone, the largest red zone in Winnipeg. With construction workers and tradespeople in mind, McKenna Fasteners and Tools is your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. So come on down to our Winnipeg store location today, located on 1557 King Edward Street in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And welcome back to this edition of the mmjhl podcast. If you made it to this point, well, you made it to the end of episode 18, season 2. Want to give a big thanks again to Kaylin Reynolds and to Anthony Jacob for joining this edition of the mmjhl podcast. Not sure when we'll be broadcasting Charleswood Hawks hockey again. Sure, we'll be broadcasting them in the playoffs, given that Eric Hoy's situation gets figured out with the arena in that, with their Wi-Fi in that arena. Wow, butchered my words there, but yeah, excited for what's to come in February for mmjhl game day nonetheless. As for here in January, how we're going to be finishing off with the game tonight, St. Vital taking on the St. James Junior Canucks. The Victorias at home at the Centennial, as they'll be looking to improve to 2 straight wins. St. James looking to bounce back from that overtime loss they suffered on Sunday against the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. As for on Friday, we'll be back to covering the Raiders as they'll be at home to take on the Transcona Railer Express at 7:30 p.m. at the Seven Oaks Sportsplex, or the Seven Oaks Arena, whatever you may want to call it. As for Sunday in the league, G-Show Productions will have Transcona battling St. James at their home rink at East End Arena on mmjhl game day for our first February broadcast of the season. Check back on our website as well as on our social media pages for our full February schedule, as will be released here in the next few days over this weekend for sure. I want to give a special thanks to you, the viewer, for tuning into this one. Hope you tune into the next one, which is going to be coming out again next Thursday. Time to be determined at this point. We'll also have the guest list posted by next week on our social media pages as well as on our website at gshow.ca. As for our sponsors, thank you once again to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Terrico, McKenna Fasteners and Tools, and Goaltenders for supporting and continuing to support the coverage of Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League content here on the network and every other piece of content that we produce. Until next week, everybody, we'll see you then for episode 19, season 2 of the mmjhl podcast. Hope you mmjhl fans tune in tonight for St. James taking on the St. Vital Victorias at St. Vital Centennial Arena. Until next time, though, folks, we'll give you the peace out here as well as waving so long. Have a great and wonderful, safe weekend. Enjoy all the great hockey coming your way. And yeah, till 7 days from now, mmjhl fans, we'll see you for episode 19, season 2 of the mmjhl podcast.